Hey guys, so obviously I have a lot to do some maintenance on right now. Today I want to talk to you about either up potting or doing some damage control on basil like I'm gonna have to do probably in the situation I'm in. We're still probably at least a couple weeks from planting things in the ground out at the family garden. We probably could have done it sooner, but we just couldn't bet on the weather continuing to be as mild as it has turned out to be, because the minute that you put all your eggs in that basket, that's when you're going to put everything in the ground. The weather has been gorgeous and perfect for a month and a half, and then you get a freak freeze and everything just goes kablooey. So it is wisdom not to do that, even though it stinks when in situations like this, hindsight that you have tells you you could have actually put things in the ground sooner. That being said, basil is a heat-loving herb. It is very forgiving, it is very easy to grow, it is absolutely one of the first things I would recommend for a new gardener, especially if you like pizza sauce, spaghetti sauce, things like that, pesto. It also helps to discourage certain pests because basil has a very strong smell in the oils of the plant. But, and I could kick myself for this because as somebody who has been working with plants as long as I have, I should have figured it out a lot sooner than I did. I don't know why I needed somebody else to say it before the light bulb went on. You probably should wait to start your basil seeds until about the time you're starting your tomato seeds, because basil germinates fairly easily and it grows fairly quickly. There's really no reason to start it early with your peppers and some of your longer starting things like parsley, sage, in some cases dill, thyme. There's a lot of things that do start very, very slowly that it is good to start back in February, and I did, but for at least several years now, I've always started my basil right along with them, and I always run into these huge plants that are ready to go in the ground before I'm ready to get them in the ground. So I don't know why it didn't occur to me that I could wait to start my basil. So starting next year, we're gonna start the basil later so I don't wind up with plants that are quite so big so quickly. If it was time to put them in the ground right this minute, this would be fine. They have struggled a little bit for a few weeks, and I know I picked a flower off of one actually yesterday, so that tells me the plants are starting to feel some stress. Plants will flower or bolt when they feel stressed because it's the plant's survival mechanisms kicking in. It feels stressed and it says, we better reproduce quick because we're gonna be toast soon. Something in our environment is not right and we're not gonna make it. So to perpetuate their species, they immediately go to seed and try to throw seeds so that then the next generation can come up. It's pretty interesting actually. The good thing is that, like I said, basil is very forgiving, so there's a number of things that we can do here. I think honestly what works best for me, I'm not going to do it with all of them because I do want to take this opportunity to show you guys how to handle separating basil seedlings and things like that. What I'm going to do, where's my scissors? So basil propagates very, very easily, just as easy as the tomatoes you should be starting it with at the same time. And citronella and oregano, I have some pictures of them growing roots just in jars of water that I'll throw up here. But basil will do the same thing. So all we want to do is I'm going to cut it right here at the base. So what this is going to do, I'm going to pull off some of the leaves, the bottom leaves, just kind of pinch them off. So let me come a little closer to show you something real quick. If it will focus, see these little nubs right here? Those are leaves that are fixing to come out. So every time you have a branch of leaves, a lot of times there will be nodes And there's some even up here. If you can see those. I know this lighting's not ideal for it. But it's gonna, if you basically pinch these leaves off, this little node will grow out into another branch. So tomatoes operate very similarly. So I'm gonna go ahead, I'm gonna pinch those little leaves off because I don't want it to try to grow a branch in there just yet. But those are points at which roots will easily grow out. I'm gonna trim a little bit more of this off. And you just plunk it in a jar of water, like that. And it's gonna grow out roots, and it will be the same plant, but it will not be the plant in the state of stress that it's in now. And it's one of the reasons that I like using these transparent plastic cups, because it really means I don't have to guess what their root situation is. I can see how packed in their roots are getting. So like this one is really, really pretty packed. And if I was gonna go put it in the ground right now, it would be fine. But since it's gonna be probably a couple of weeks yet, I'm going to do the same thing with this one. And it will just grow a new set of roots. And it will forgive me because I was not a good plant mom. And then we will put it in a little bit of soil and put it in the sunshine for a week or two. And then it will get planted outside in the garden, and we will just continue on just as planned. So this is just gonna go into my tub of potting mix. I'll just dump the whole thing into it, and the roots will, and these leaves too, if you don't want them for, you can put them in your salad or on your sandwich if you really like basil. These are actually, these leaves are in really good shape. So I might actually just save those. That one's kind of yucky, so I'll put that in my dirt bin. But those we'll save, and I'll make a pizza or something. So this whole thing I'll just throw in my dirt bin, and the roots and everything will disintegrate and just eventually break down into more soil. So that is the way I'm going to handle most of my plants that are going in my garden. Another thing that you can do, and even that I would normally do if I didn't have them this far over mature at this state, is separate them. So it helps you save space if you sow a couple in one cup. I sow 5, 6, 7 in one cup, just because you don't know how many of those seeds are actually going to germinate, and there's no sense wasting time and space taking care of cups before they're germinated if you don't even know if they're going to come up. So say you had 3, 4, in fact I think I have, this one has, how many plants do I have in here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 6 plants in this cup, so this is a good example. This one I must have missed when I thinned the others down to, I separated them all out into 2 plants per cup, because that's what I had the time to do at that time. So you're just gonna gently massage the sides of the cup. And tip it out. Alright, so actually 6, so there are 8, because there looks like there's 3 more seeds that came up later. Sometimes it happens that way. So I'm just gonna very gently pull this apart. There is gonna be some ripping of roots, especially when you have plants that are this tall and this established. It's easier on them when they are smaller. It's why I like to separate them before they're this far along, because it's less trauma to the plant. So you can see I separated one out here. There's a decent amount of roots attached to that. I can just plunk this in a cup of soil and water it, and it might look puny for a day or so after transplanting, but then it will do just fine. Okay, so there's another one. We probably will not attempt to save every single one in this bunch because it is an awfully big bunch. And I don't need that many plants. I have no doubt they probably would all make it because basil is really that incredible in terms of being a survivalist. It can really make it through some stuff and survive. Like this one, I wasn't able to get a lot of root out with it. It only has a little bit, but I have no doubt that stuck in dirt, this one will make it. They're that incredible. I might save them to try to give them away or sell them, but my next dilemma is going to be that I only have space for so many plants right now. I'm working on a single shelving unit in my garage. So there's the last one, the big one. Got this huge table and somehow it's still not enough room. Part of the problem is I decided to get all of the things I needed to deal with out here at one time, so that basically it's taking up my whole dining room table and a good chunk of our functional space here in this area of our lower floor, which means I have to deal with it all before life can go on, because now it's in the way of everything else instead of just being tucked away in the garage where I can continue being allowed to let it go and let it go and let it go. Some of the stuff, none of it is dealing with irreparable harm right at the moment, but if I were to leave it too much longer, we might run into some problems. So I have my cup here. I filled it about yay full with soil, and I'm just going to stick my fingers in there and just kind of pull the dirt to the sides so that there's a well in there. And I'm going to use one of the littler ones for this. So I'm just gonna plop him in that well, and then I'm gonna push the dirt down the sides around it. And I got another thing of soil so I can tuck some more in the top here. Basil, if you're having to repot it like this for any reason, it's good to go ahead and bury it deep because of the way that root system works and comes back. Tomatoes are the same way. You can do similar, I think, with citronella, as long as you're not burying a node that you expect more branches to come out of, because then it'll struggle. Might do a video on that sometime. So now it's all dirty. I'll come here a little bit closer and show you. So that is our happy little basil plant, and so I will just water this and put it, I'm gonna start putting them out on a tray in the sunlight to harden them off, because I want them to be ready the minute they have the garden tilled and ready to go. So those are two methods for dealing with your basil plants, and that's how you're gonna separate your basil plants. But ideally, you're gonna do it when they're this big, not when they're this big. So this is another sign of stress. This one was in the back. Like, I've watered it and it's still not standing up. And it's not even that it's not strong enough to, it's that it was bent for long enough that it's just growing that direction now. So I think this happened because it got drier than most of them more consistently, because it was on the back of my shelf and I couldn't get to it as easily. I must have missed it a couple of times when I was watering. So it doesn't look like its roots are too badly packed in, so I'm gonna leave it in its cup here, but I am going to come down to this node, and actually I'll show you a little bit closer. This is where I almost wish I could have a second camera going closer to me so I could show you these things. So you can see here's node is right here, so you've got a side shoot here and you got a side shoot here. So I'm just going to cut that right there, and it will continue to shoot those two out and become a bushier plant. That's also how you're going to prune your basil in your garden if you want it to be rounder and bushier instead of taller. And then this, the top that I cut off, these are gorgeous leaves, so you could eat them, you could use them for tea, or I could cut this part off. Let's see if I can see under this leaf. I could cut this part off, and I could cut this part off, and then you'd have a clean stem along here and stick it in water, and it would put out roots right here probably. So that is, in a nutshell, how to deal with some basil dilemmas. And there's so many things that basil is good for, so I highly encourage you to grow it. I've got some that do need to be up potted. I'll show you that here real quick. This is a Genovese basil that we've been looking at. These ones here, this is a purple opal basil. I wish you could smell it. It smells amazing. So I am gonna go ahead and probably separate some of these because they're starting to look a little bit stressed out. And then I have some basil that I started after I started all these others, because it was a variety that I had never tried before that I knew I wanted to try, and I ordered the seeds from MI Gardener. It's called Blue Spice Basil, and I started in a small cell planting tray, which I think is how I'm gonna do this from now on. This is the first season I bothered to go get one, and it's just a cheap one, 36 and 36, so that's how many is in a single tray, but it does make it a lot easier to water. And this is already putting roots through the bottom of the tray. But basically it just grows in a cell with it's a very small cell, not the smallest size you can get by any means. This is, I'd say, a medium small cell. And they just need to be put into, oh, there was, surprise! Basil does that a lot. There's actually 3 plants in this little cell. Can't tell if that one's basil or not. It's so little it could just be a weed. I do have some wheat seeds in my potting mix because I reuse it. So that's definitely basil. So there was 2 in here that I can use. I can massage them apart here. I just want to make sure that I label them. They do look a little different than the Genovese, but they are a very similar color. And at a glance, I'm sure I will not remember which is which without scratching the leaves. They do smell a little bit different. So Blue Spice Basil, I'm excited for tea because it has a little bit of a vanilla flavor along with the basil flavor. So, and if you get a little too much dirt, this is why I like to work in a tray like this. This is just like a plastic food storage tray that I got from the dollar store. It works pretty well. You can dump a little to the side if you need to. Another basil out of the cell. This one, you can see because there wasn't more than one that came up in this one, it wasn't struggling so hard with other plants for room, so it's developed some beautiful roots. And that's the nice thing about those trays, is that the roots can just come down through the bottom of the tray into the water where you're watering from underneath. You just fill the whole bottom tray with water and the roots can drink, and the soil doesn't get soaked and stay that way, which means you have less problems with mold and fungus and things like that. Fungus can be a good thing, but you don't want to deal with too much of it at this particular stage. So just plunk it in there and fill around the edges. It is a messy business, so this kind of chore is definitely not for people who don't enjoy the gardener's manicure, as they call it. Dirty fingernails. I'll cut a little bit more right there. Oops, my piece of wood. I try to pull those big pieces of wood out or bury them in the bottom of the cup, and then they go into the ground in the garden, where they will eventually just break down. So there is our blue spice basil. So obviously I planted a lot of basil. I love basil in lots of different forms and lots of different varieties. I think that it is gorgeous and it smells amazing and it's a lot of fun to eat and performs some very important jobs in your garden where discouraging pests are concerned. So what is your favorite way to use basil? What are your favorite varieties? Have you only tried one or two? If you haven't branched out, I didn't realize until very recently how many different varieties there are. So take a look out there and see what you can try and what you like. And share in the comments below your favorite way to use it, because without the YouTube community, I never probably would have known about basil tea. And it's super funny because the lady that shared it, she found out from somebody else. Again, she'd been gardening for years, had no idea you could turn it into iced tea. And I think the video that she put out about it, she started it with, "Guys, we're about to change your lives." And while it was a little dramatic, like she didn't undersell it. It's a pretty amazing thing on a hot summer day to have a glass of iced basil tea. So I strongly suggest you give it a try and let us know how you like it. Come back and tell us about it. You can put honey in it, you can put stevia, maple syrup, whatever your preferred sweetener, or you can just drink it straight. Hot or cold, and it's very, very good, and it's very good for you. So until next time, happy growing. Thanks for stopping by, and I appreciate you spending some time with me.